Chingotto and Galan joined forces. It was all about Chingotto and how, like, could he step up? I think all the pressure is on him. Galan is a made man. If he retires today, there is no one that will doubt his greatness.
Coello stepped it up, and I feel that in the last two tournaments, he's potentially been a level above, or at the very least, a little bit above Tapia. Really impressed by Koki's level. Quiniento produced something like 60-something winners. Lebron and Paquito probably challenges Coello and Tapia the most because they both can generate so many winners.
So you go, the thing that really gets me with Los Superpios, which I'm really glad that you actually brought them up because we definitely need to talk about them. I feel like they're the biggest elephant in the room right now. And is the fact that the way they're losing, I think.
For me, it's alarms on, and say this continues for a number of months and say that each of their respective pairs, they don't really feel that they're competing with Coello and Tapia, at least regarding the chase for the #1 spot. Would they suddenly consider another whole lot of pair changes?
Because Galan and Chingo have made more finals than Los Superpios this year, which is mad, even though they've just played one tournament together. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Paddle Pod, your weekly podcast covering professional paddle, presented by Hugo and Gons. We're on to episode 44. And as always, I'm joined by my friend and co-host, Hugo. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Gons, and very excited for this episode in particular, because for the first time ever, we will be making our long-awaited debut on YouTube. Am I right?
Correct. I think I couldn't be more excited, to be honest. This is definitely one of the most special days. I think we've been planning to do this for quite a while now. We were always a bit doubtful, should we go to YouTube or not? I think we both knew that in the long term we needed to go. Obviously, a lot of people are on YouTube is another way for our audience to listen to us, to see us as well, and to hear us. And I think what's going to be great about YouTube is all the visuals and things that we can add. So, for example, when we talk about stats and things like that, is something that we can add as well whilst we're talking and people can see it in the video. So yeah, I'm very, very excited. And obviously when we have guests as well, I think that will be great so that people can see the guests that we speak to. So yeah, couldn't be more excited, to be honest.
Agreed. Agreed. And yeah, hopefully we don't lose too many followers when we're looking a bit run down after a big weekend, or just generally our general aspect, which probably leaves a bit much to desire.
Yeah, exactly. Hopefully, our looks are a bit better than our voices at least. So at least we don't lose out.
Agreed. But yeah, maybe moving on to the nitty-gritty and what we wanted to chat about today. The main focus is going to be Premier Paddles, Venezuelan P2, which has just taken place. And to be honest, I just wanted to kick off saying that even though the venue was pretty spectacular, because the courts were literally right next to the sea, so it was pretty cool to watch the matches being played and the views that players had right onto the beach, the Venezuelan beaches, and more specifically, the beaches across Puerto Cabello. But yeah, I just wanted to say that the the organization and the tournament itself left quite a lot to desire, mainly due to the fact that a lot of players suffered from stomach viruses, and actually a lot of pairs had to pull out of the tournament, and that was during the course of the tournament. So Mike Yanguas and Javi Garrido, obviously one of the most informed pairs in the circuit, had to pull out due to a stomach virus. And there was a number of other pairs on the female side of the draw that also had to pull out, some major pairs. So yeah, I have to say, we all know that when you travel the world, and particularly going to places like Asia and South America, you've got to be extra careful with things like water and, drinking drinks when you put ice cubes in them, because, we know that some areas of the world are still in the process of becoming developed countries. But yeah, I would have thought that the tournament organizers would have maybe made a bit more of an effort for their players not to suffer and eventually have to pull out, because it was sad to see that. And yeah, all my, not my thoughts. But yeah, all my support to the players who did suffer from a virus, and we even saw Campagnolo collapse on the court, which was pretty scary and something that you wouldn't wish on any players.
Yeah, mad, to be honest. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in terms of players having to pull out due to viruses, like a number of them. It wasn't just one isolated case. It was one day in particular was kind of crazy. Like so many matches had to be rescheduled and there were loads of walkovers. So yeah, just kind of crazy to see. And definitely, I think it will be, or hopefully it is like a learning or a lesson for Premier Paddle going forward on what they need to do, what they can't do. Obviously, this is like their first year being like the only tour like on. So yeah, hopefully, obviously it's not great to see, but I'm hoping that this is definitely something that they can learn from and going forward shouldn't happen. I think as well, they've had issues with heating. I think that's something that we've seen over the last couple of tournaments. So not only here in Venezuela, but in Doha as well and Riyadh. So in terms of match time and Acapulco as well. So like matches being at times where there's like extreme heat, even in places. So yeah, I guess these are things that we definitely don't want to see because first and foremost, players' health is everything, and you can't risk that. But yeah, hopefully moving forward, it should be even more like I guess less and less reoccurring essentially.
Yeah, fingers crossed, because as we know, it's pretty essential that players feel safe and that we have all players playing to their full strength. So yeah, I just wanted to make a point because it was just a bit sad to see major pairs and just any pairs or players pulling out. And as I said, really scary to see Campagnolo collapse on the court. He seems to be okay
Yeah,
and pretty much fully recovered. And poor guy, he's had a few tough months with the injury that he suffered towards the end of last year, which was a pretty serious one, given that he had a rupture in one of his muscles and he was out for, well, a number of months and actually got injured shortly after coming back. So yeah, we wish him all the best because we love watching him and his crazy behaviors on the court.
exactly. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to see as much of him as we would have liked. So hopefully he has a calm and injury-free rest of the year.
Agreed. But yeah, maybe moving on to the tournament itself. And Gons, maybe I wanted to ask you about your major highlight or highlights just to kick off with.
Yeah, of course. I think that my main highlight of the tournament has to be Chingotto and Galan. It's obviously the first time they're playing together. I wasn't expecting much of them. I think that I've discussed in the past how I do see them being up there in terms of competing for the number one, definitely winning titles. But I didn't expect much of them this tournament. I didn't think they would definitely go all the way to the final. They had quite a tough draw because they had in the quarterfinals Paquito and Sanyo, who after the first tournament have been like really decent, making the semifinals consistently. Then they obviously had Los Super Pibes, which they beat. And funnily enough, Galan and Chingo have made more finals than Los Super Pibes this year, which is mad, even though they've just played one tournament together. So yeah, I think that I was particularly excited by Chingotto's level. I think that he really showed that he's up for the challenge and that he can be a good option essentially to fight for the number one. Because if you think about it, for me, when Chingotto and Galan joined forces, it was all about Chingotto and how like could he step up? I think all the pressure is on him. Galan is a made man. If he retires today, there's no one that will doubt his greatness. He's made number one for a number of years. He's dominated paddle. He's won every single title. Whereas Chingotto still has like all his legacy to build. His record in finals isn't great. I think now it's probably 1-14, if I'm not mistaken. Only won one title. So the pressure was really on Chingotto, like to make this pair work. And I really think that he did show that he can step up. Now, obviously, it was just one tournament. Let's not like get ahead of ourselves too much, but I definitely believe that if he plays like this, they will win titles, because especially in that first set, and it was said by Arturo Coello, they were absolutely dominating them. And Chingotto was playing much better than Ale Galán, which towards the end especially fell off, I think, in the last two sets. So yeah, like really encouraged by both their levels. I think that you could see that there's still moments where both of them like they can integrate better. There's definitely moments where Galan wasn't too sure if he could essentially take up like the court and go for the shot. So a lot of the times it felt like he arrived quite late, and instead of being able to smash the ball, he had to settle for a víbora because like he just couldn't get there in enough time. So I think that there's still room for improvement, which I think that's what gives me a lot of hope for them, because it's not like something that you're just like, okay, that this is it, right? Like that's the end product. They can't get better than that. And I do feel that they can. So yeah, it gave me a lot of encouragement.
Interesting. I mean, I do have to say that I was very, very impressed by Chingo and Galan in their first tournament together. And to be honest, I'm now a bit nervous regarding my prediction involving Paquito and Lebron finishing above Chingotto and Galan at the end of the season. And I know you're really vouching for Galan Chingotto. I mean, we're yet to watch Lebron and Paquito, and I'm convinced that they're going to do really well. But yeah, as you said, I was particularly impressed with Chingotto because we all know that Galan right now is the best player in the world, or one of the best players in the world, alongside Tapia and maybe Coello. But I'd probably put Tapia and Galan at the top right now. So we all knew that he was going to be doing well, but Chingotto, I thought, was potentially even the best player of the final, or maybe the second best player after Coello, because I do really think that Coello stepped it up towards the end of the match, and there were some
Yeah.
crucial balls that he went for. He went for the shots, he took the risk, and they paid off. So yeah, I thought Coello was sensational. And to be honest, that was a bit of a continuation from the previous tournament, because I really did feel that Goya stepped it up. And I feel that in the last two tournaments, he's potentially been a level above, or at the very least, a little bit above Tapia. Now, Tapia's consistency has been amazing basically since they teamed up at the start of last year. But I do think that the last couple of tournaments, Coelho, just the number of winners that he's produced, now he's really smashing, and is smashing his back to his best. And his defensive abilities, both blocking, which has always been his strength, but also at the back of the court, and his lobs have improved significantly compared to the end of last season when we can see him struggling. And I think Tapia was carrying the pair a bit. So yeah, as I say, very impressed with Coelho. But yeah, Chingotto and Galan are definitely one of my highlights. But I do have quite a few others. I thought Coqui Nieto was really, really good and really impressive throughout the whole tournament. Him and John Santh made the semi-finals, and they actually won the first set against Abiangoya in the tiebreak 7-6. And I genuinely felt that what let them down in that semi-final was more John Santh and John Santh's level. I thought that he was very erratic. He made a lot of unforced errors. And Coqui Nieto was even doing well in attack. And I think from we obviously follow Paddle Up's podcast very closely. I'm sure some of our listeners are big fans of the Paddle Up podcast as well. And I heard them saying that Coquinito produced something like 60 something winners throughout the week, which for a player like Coquinito, whose strengths are his defense and his mobility and just getting that extra ball back in and causing the opponent some forced error, I think that was really, really impressive. So yeah, really impressed by Goggy's level. And maybe just one other shout out, but I'd love to hear your other highlights, because I'm sure you've got a couple of others. Maybe we could talk about Arnau Ayat Sanfran Guerrero, who made the quarterfinals, and they took Coqui Nieto and John Sanz to three sets, and it was a very, very tight match, and it could have gone either way. But yeah, I was particularly impressed by Fran Guerrero. He's, just a very exciting player to watch. And there's, I'd say there's more kind of up and coming backhand players who pundits and the paddle world are excited about, and maybe not that many forehand players. And I genuinely think that Fran Guerrero is one to watch out for because he's got everything. He's got the attacking abilities that modern paddle, well, basically requires from forehand players, but also he's really good in defense. He controls the tempo of the game really well. And to be honest, there's not many shots that I think he can't play. So yeah, very impressed by him and Arnaud Ayats, who, we've heard a lot about, and there's the whole paddle world and the rest of the paddle players are expecting big things from him.
Yeah, those are really good shout outs, and I like the variety in them. Probably players that we haven't mentioned that much this year, so that's great. And we also did, or I don't know if we, but I think I was a bit harsh on Koki and John last week. So who knows? Maybe they did hear the podcast and they're like, "Well, we're gonna shut this guy up," and they definitely did because they made the semifinals and they played an incredible match against Coello and Tapia. They beat them. They got a set of them, which is not easy to do these days. So yeah, massive like congrats to them, which yeah, hopefully they can take this moving forward as well. And hopefully can, I don't know, maybe if they had any internal doubts themselves about like where's this pair going, maybe that sort of just nipped it in the bud per se. But yeah, I want to actually go a bit into maybe before like actually talking about like other highlights and stuff. I just wanted to give some stats both from Galan and Chingotto. And now that, like I mentioned, that we're doing YouTube and we're able to add maybe visuals, maybe this is something that I'm going to be able to add, like so all our viewers essentially can see it whilst I speak about this and whilst we speak about it. But just to highlight, Galan had 23 winners and 18 unforced errors. So this is definitely not like his usual self. Normally the ratio is definitely a bit higher. He doesn't have that many unforced errors. I think in particular, and this is something that we both alluded to, is the fact that on important points he wasn't great. He actually had 0 winners and 4 unforced errors, and I think that's what really sort of let the pair down. And then in terms of, we also talked about, well, you mentioned, Hugo, how Coello was actually being really good the last couple of tournaments. And Coello in the final had 25 winners and 19 unforced errors. So he had more winners than Tapia, for example. And however, he also did have a bit more of unforced errors. But I think what's sort of really impressed me was the volume of play. He's been playing. So in the final, he had 55% of the balls played of the pair. So yeah, I think it was a clear tactic for Galan and Chingotto to go after Coello. But it didn't seem like it worked. And then there's also this contribution score graph, which essentially of the players, and I'll try to post this in the video so players can see. But funnily enough, like Coello was both in terms of Coello and Tapia in the first set, they kind of like dropped. And then Coello actually started towards the second set being increasingly a lot more than Tapia, and just being consistently high. And then Tapia eventually took over and then ended up the match actually sort of a bit higher than Coello. And then funnily enough, Chingotto, you were saying, was probably maybe the second best player of the final. Actually, Chingotto was a completely high level, whereas Galan, you could see that he drops. So hopefully our viewers can see this when I put it on the video. But it's really interesting to see essentially how each of the score of the players develops throughout the match and like how their impact on the game is. But yeah, I think that just speaks to the fact that how Coelho has been able to sort of raise his level and sort of maintain it. But then I also speaks to the fact of Tapia's brilliance and where he does have but maybe in the first set, I think particular, you could see that he was just a bit lost, but then really taking over in the second set and in terms of the important points as well. Like he was, I thought, absolutely clutch. Um, so yeah, just really interesting to sort of bring these stats to the forefront and just so our viewers can see them as well. I mean, my other highlight, to be honest, was going to be Tapia and Coello, because I just like, it's just maybe a bit weird one, but like, what else is there to say? Like, what can anyone do to beat these guys? I just, at the moment, it's almost like either injury or a lack of motivation or a very, 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 very slow court can stop them, because the thing that it just made me think was like, you've basically, when you have two players that can generate such an amount of winners, it's just so hard to beat them, because like, you don't, like, one can be really bad, but the other can still hold a pair. And then when the other one, let's say, re-engages in the match and then starts playing well, then it's like, then it's over, because then they're both at a good level. Whereas, for example, with Galán and Chingo, we saw, right? When, even though Chingo played an incredible match, like, to win, Galán probably needed to play like really, really well also. So when I also then think about the other pairs that there are out there, there's not that combination of like very like high winner generators on both sides. To be honest, the other one that I can think of like realistically is Paquito and Lebron now. And that's almost like a prototype of what Galan and Lebron were, to be honest, just at a less good essentially. But when you look at the other pairs, like Tello Vela, okay, only Tello really. Los Super Pibes, realistically, Dinena's not going to be generating that amount of winners. Koki John, same thing. Like, you've got one player who can generate a lot of winners, but not necessarily like Momo and Alex Ruiz. You only really have, I guess, Alex Ruiz that can generate such an amount of winners. So it's like, it just honestly, it just basically makes me think like, can anyone realistically stop them? And yeah, that's my rant over now.
I'm surprised you're ranting about it, given how much of a fanboy you are of the pair. But I do understand your concern. I assume you're just concerned about well, how competitive the season's going to be.
Yeah,
And I mean, to be honest, I think you've just alluded to my thinking and my point in the fact that I think LeBron and Paquito, if they play as well as they could play
yeah,
and to their potential, they should be the pair that probably challenges Coello and Tapia the most, because they both can generate so many winners. As you say, Paquito is obviously a level below Galan, at least in terms of his attacking abilities. Defensively, I'm not that sure, because they're probably a bit more even though Galan's physical prowess probably could even edge it in the defensive side as well. But yeah, I well, what to say about Coello and Tapia? I think your the stats that you read out, which, just so that our viewers hear it again, they're courtesy of Padel Intelligence,
yes,
and we love reading. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to their stats after every tournament, because we're both obviously massive paddle fans, and I assume there's a lot of people who watch paddle just for the entertainment side. But you and I and a lot of others, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, love hearing and reading stats, because actually there's a bit of a lack of stats in the whole paddle world right now. And I think Padel Intelligence is shedding a lot of light on, well, on the whole statistics side of the game. So thanks very much, guys. But yeah, I think what you alluded to regarding Coello playing about 55% of the balls clearly shows that Tapia right now is the player that that opponents and that other players don't want to play the ball to, because he I don't know whether he's the better player of the two. Obviously, that's open to discuss, but he's probably been the most informed player of the pair for a long time. And the thing is that, so pairs are now saying, okay, let's play the ball more to Coello, but Coello generates so many winners, and right now he's playing at the same level as Tapia has been playing at, or even a bit higher. So the opponents are like, what do we do? Do we change? Do we go back to Tapia? We know what Tapia's capable of. So yeah, it's almost like you can't really find the gap, and you can't really find, well, how to damage them and how to create chaos in on the other side of the court. So yeah, I think it's going to be. I think there's a long season ahead, and even though Coello and Tapia started the season, well, have started the season really well, we saw that towards the start of last year as well, and well, we saw how close the Superpibes were from clinching the number one ranking towards the end of the season. So I just think there's, well, given that obviously we'll have over 70 or 75% of the season left, I still think there's a lot of room for things to change, and you never know with injuries, etc. But I do think that Goya and Dabia look more and more like the clear favourites for retaining the number one spot, unless something major changes. That could be, well, Lebron and Paquito, suddenly settling in incredibly well and playing to their full potential. It could be the Super Pibes getting back to their level and starting to win, because actually that takes me to one of my lowlights, and it has to be the Super Pibes, because even though they made the semi-finals again, which obviously is incredibly impressive, particularly given how competitive paddle is today, I just think that everyone was expecting them to beat Chingotto and Galan, because, well, they've been playing together for such a long time, and they were the number two ranked pair not long ago, but they just the key points in their match against Chingotto and Galan, so the semi-final, I just thought they played really badly. And in the first set, they were 4-all. Chingotto and Galan were serving, and they were love 40 up to break and serve for the set. And they lost that game, and then they lost the next game. And yeah, I just thought that the key games in the match and the key moments they played really badly. So I do
And
think that they're only a step away from changing that.
yeah, and to be honest, Hugo, the thing that really gets me with Los Superpios, which I'm really glad that you actually brought them up because we definitely need to talk about them. I feel like they're the biggest elephant in the room right now. And it's the fact that the way they're losing. I think not only were they 40 love up to break, and then potentially go on and win the set, but it's they gave up, like they had two unforced errors in that game, and if I'm not mistaken, it would like at least one of them was for sure a direct Stupasuk miss on the return of a serve. I'm not sure if another one was like that, but anyways, there were definitely two unforced errors, and they, as you said, they had opportunities where they could have capitalized and they didn't, and it's so uncharacteristic from them. That's, I think, what really gets me, and what I'm really, I wouldn't say like concerned, but unexpected, I guess, from the start of the season. It's, yeah, okay, they've made semifinals, you can lose, but the way they've lost is just so unlike them, because they're always thought of these, they're going to get every single ball, they're going to fight back, and in important points is when they actually play their best. And it hasn't really been like that. I remember as well when they lost to Garrido and Yanguas in Doha, like the way they lost that first set, honestly, it just didn't seem like they were on the court. It was absolutely mental. So it's just like the feeling is not really good, if you see what I mean. The way they're losing is doesn't sit that well with me.
No, no, I agree, and that's exactly what I wanted to say, because I do think that there's a side of me that thinks they're only a step away from making it, and maybe making the final, or winning the tournament that makes their season take off. And we saw, well, last season when they won that first tournament against Tapia and Coello in Valladolid, the World Paddle Tour tournament, because they had beaten them towards the start of the season. Some people forget it was one of the Premier Paddle tournaments, but that Valladolid win was a game changer for their season. And from then onwards, they started winning so many tournaments, and that's when the chase for the number one spot really started. So there's a side of me that thinks they're very close, because again, when looking at the semi-final against Chingo and Galan, they were a point here and there away from. They honestly, they could have won that match 2 sets to love, and I wouldn't have been that surprised. It was a very, very, very even match. But the other side of me thinks they must be getting pretty nervous, because actually, I don't know whether you know this, but they're now the fourth seeded pair after this tournament. So Paquito and LeBron are now second, so they'll remain second. That hasn't changed. But Chingotto and Galan have just overtaken them. And even though the points are very tight between second, third, and fourth pairs, mentally it must be tough. Thinking we were very, very close to clinching the number one spot last season, and we're now the fourth seeded pair, and Chingotto and Galan, who've just teamed up, have beaten us. So for me, it's alarms on. And the thing is that with so many pair changes and LeBron and Galan now, well, trying new partnerships, obviously Galan called Dineno last season and LeBron called Estupa, they both said no. But say this continues for a number of months and say that each of their respective pairs, they don't really feel that they're competing with Coello and Tapia, at least regarding the chase for the number one spot, would they suddenly consider another whole lot of pair changes? Because why not? I mean, even though they're best mates and even though Stupan and Nino were very close to clinching the number one spot, if they continue in this dynamic and they, with this feeling that they, with the top pairs, they are still struggling to win and dominate, then they might consider it. So that's my big worry.
Yeah, I could definitely see in the future. Let's say if the year, I think realistically, if they finish third or fourth, like if they finish fourth, I can definitely see them taking a hard look and analyzing really deeply and really thinking about splitting up. I think if they finish second, I don't think so, but third and fourth, oof, yeah, I think if they get that call from Leon and Galan, they're not gonna say no again. Put it that way.
No, I've got to be honest. I genuinely think if they don't finish the season second and Dineno were to receive a call from Galan, I think he'd probably say yes
Yeah, yeah.
because he knows that he is the best backhand player in the world alongside Tapia. Potentially, Stupa would have a bit more of a doubt if Lebron called him because maybe Dineno and Lebron are a bit closer level wise. Well, when you compare Stupa with Galan, it's hard to say right now. But yeah, it's a concern. And hey, I mean, this is us being a bit negative. They have made another semi-final, and they are well in the top four pairs in the world, and by far, I do think those top four pairs are going to dominate, and I don't see many other pairs making the semi-finals. Being totally
Yeah.
honest, I mean, we still have to see how Lebron and Paquito settle in because you never know, and they're very emotional players, and that could play against them. But I just think Chingotto and Galan are going to be very, very consistent. They're both very, very consistent players, and I just see them, well, kind of just dominating lower seeded pairs and not slipping up consistently or even at all, similar to what the Super Pibes have been doing. So yeah, I do think it's those four pairs are going to be are going to regularly make up the semi-finals roster.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And speaking about the top four, which I think, let me know what you think about this. But in my eyes, at the beginning of the season, the way I thought about the top four was you've got three pairs at the top, which are like almost like sort of inches away from each other, if you will. Obviously, Coello, Tapia, Leudon and Galan, and Los Super Pibes. And then, like, by a distance, like, you had the fourth pair, which was Paquito and Sanyo. Now it kind of feels reverse. It feels like you've got Coello Tapia at the top, very lonely, chilling. And then miles down, you've got Los Super Pibes, Chingo Galan, and Paquito Leudon sort of like inches away from each other. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a big statement, and I do see what you're saying. To be honest, I even felt that last season when Paquito was with Chingotto. It was almost like the top three pairs were above everyone, and then Paquito and Chingotto kind of sat at their own level in fourth, where no one was really close to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do agree. I have to say, I still have to watch Paquito and LeBron because you never know. They made the number one ranking. I think that Paquito right now is pretty close to his peak in terms of level. He started off the season really, really well. And actually, I was listening to Paddle Up's podcast, as I mentioned before, and they obviously have their own their own ranking that they put together, sponsored by Knox. It's really interesting and based on statistics, which is obviously really interesting for us in the whole paddle world. And I'm not sure whether it was taking into account the first three tournaments, so not including Venezuela, or taking into account the first two tournaments. But Paquito Navarro was the number one player, so the most informed player
Oh wow.
compared to everyone else based on stats. So I
Even
do think
though
that,
they got knocked out in the first round of the first tournament.
yeah,
Maybe fair.
it's really, really surprising. So that's why I'm thinking if he's playing at that level, if LeBron, a seasoned winner, and well, we've watched him, he's pretty much, I'd say, back to full potential at least. Maybe not at his best, but to full potential. If LeBron plays really well, then why not? I mean, I could see them challenging. I definitely think their ceiling is higher than Galan and Chingotto's, and well, arguable when you compare them to Stupan Dineno because obviously they did challenge Coello and Tapia last season. But in a way, I'm maybe thinking, was Stupan Dineno's last season as good as they are? Can they be better than that? It's
Mm,
hard because Dineno's
so
attacking
hard.
abilities were sensational, pretty
Yeah.
unmatched to be honest, and we wouldn't have expected him to play that well. And Stupa, we know he plays paddle pretty much in a Russian roulette way, which involves him just speeding up to the net and going for just battles and reaction kind of points. And when it plays off, yes, great. But obviously that implies a lot of unforced errors and a lot of points lost. And when it's going well, obviously they challenge for the top spot. But this season so far, it's not going well. And it's hard to change that dynamic. So yeah, I do very much agree with your point. I do think that Coello and Tapia are an arm's length away from the other three pairs that we've discussed. But who knows? It's a long season. It could all change very quickly.
Yeah, of course. And I think I'm also excited to see some slow chords into the fold. And really, I would like to see how Los Super Pibes are able to play under those conditions, because I think obviously those are more suitable to their strengths. So let's see. And last year we did have like a fair amount of slow chords. So I'm hoping that this year there's also like some as well, because if not, then I just think it's just going to be a very one-sided affair. But I think it's very interesting what you said about Paquito and Lebron, because like now after what I was mentioning about like having two, I guess, players that can easily generate winners, I'm a bit I'm a bit more bullish on them. But I still think that like what really, I guess, gives me comfort in Galan and Chingotto was, like I really mentioned, is Chingotto's level and the fact that Galan actually was like far off from what we've seen. Because I think if Galan was how he played in the first two tournaments of the season, I think they win Venezuela. So yeah, I think in any case it's going to be really exciting, because it does seem like these, if maybe we thought like, oh, Los Super Pibes are definitely going to be there and they're going to be challenging. Let's see Paquito and LeBron, and let's see Galan and Chingotto, who maybe is them actually that are able to challenge Coy and Tapia. But yeah, it's as you mentioned, it is definitely a long season ahead.
Exactly. And injuries could play a could play their bit. So hopefully they don't, but we saw how important they were, sorry, last season with LeBron and Galán and what that meant. So yeah, but maybe to kick off, sorry, not to kick off, to finalize the episode, we could touch on the new pairs that have been announced beyond the big main pairs. And actually, I'm still waiting for LeBron and Paquito's official
True.
partnership announcement, which I'm pretty excited about because I hope they do something cool, whether it's a cool video, something related to Andalusia, the region where they're from in Spain. I really want to see that. But yeah, there's been a few other new pairs announced, namely Javi Leal and Lucas Campagnolo. That's, well, the first one that I wanted to discuss. Gons, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, really excited about this pair, to be honest. I think they're two really offensive players. We've obviously Javi Leal previously partnered with Diestro, who, even though is a lefty, is not your, I would say, typical lefty offensive type player. He was definitely a bit more on the defensive side. So now that Leal gets the opportunity to go with a player like Campagnolo, who's very offensive, really good smash, really good in the air, really powerful. I think, yeah, it's a really good move for him, and I think we've both spoken about Leal's potential, and we were both sort of hoping that he'd had a big season. Probably the start hasn't been the greatest, but yeah, I'm very excited. I think it'll definitely be a fun watch. Like they'll be a good watch. They'll play some exciting offensive style paddle. So yeah, I think I like it. What about you, Hugo?
Yeah, I mean, my first thoughts are same as you. I like it. They're both attacking players, and we know how important and how valuable that is in today's paddle world, as we've literally just mentioned. But my only worry is they're both very emotional players, and we'll see how they fit in because you never know, it could play against them. And well, Lucas Campagnolo has obviously been very unlucky throughout recent months with injuries and whatnot. And I think what Javi Leal needs is consistency. So, because we all know his potential and we all know how good his smash is and how good he is when he's playing well. But I think what's made his partnership with Jorge Diestro, which I think was pretty successful in my eyes, what I think made it a good partnership was the fact that Diestro is just so consistent, very few unforced errors, and just puts the ball in and generates those opportunities for Javi Leal to finish the point off. It's not that I don't think Campagnolo is consistent, but I think that he's slightly higher up that matrix when you compare consistency to risk taking forehand players, because actually he's played on the backhand and he loves to smash. So I think the partnership could either go really well or quite badly. I don't know whether there's kind of a halfway line, or actually the other side of it is they could do really well in some tournaments and then in other tournaments play really badly. So yeah, I don't see them being a super consistent pair, but I'm excited to watch them, is my summary.
Yeah, I think they probably have like a high ceiling, but they're not going to be completely like they're not going to be extremely consistent, basically.
Agreed. Agreed.
And then we've got also announced Alex Chozas with Lucho Capra. So maybe we can finish off the episode giving our thoughts on that. And yeah, Hugo, I'll hand it over to you. What are your thoughts?
Well, I firstly I feel bad for Chozas because he's been changing partners just pretty much every day, it feels like. And yeah, it's just not good for the development of a young paddle player who I personally really like. I think he's got a lot of the qualities that a modern backhand player needs, a great smash. He's technically very good. He can play most of the shots. He can play drop shots. He can, well, volley well, etc. But I wouldn't say I'm very excited about his partnership with Lucho Capra because I don't think Lucho Capra has been playing his best paddle for the last maybe year, maybe a bit less. I think that when Lucho Capra was playing best was, when he was playing back in the day with Maxi Sanchez, and they did fairly well in some tournaments, but towards the end of their partnership, they started to drop off a bit. And obviously his partnership with Bella was was clearly a big fail, to put it nicely. And even though I do think that the majority of the fault was on Bella's side, unfortunately, because injuries haven't really let him just basically perform to the level that he's used to playing at, and that's probably also related to the fact that this is his last season and he's old, so we can't expect everything from the GOAT anymore. But yeah, I have a similar feeling in terms of how consistent that pair is going to be when looking at Capra and Chozas. But yeah, on their day, could be an exciting pair to watch. They both have a smash, and they're both they both have that trick style card in their in their portfolio, as per se. So yeah, we'll see how they do. But I wouldn't, if I had to pick one out of the two pairs, I probably would go for Leal Campagnolo. I think
Interesting.
they, yeah, I don't know. I just think they fit together a bit better, even though probably on paper you could say that Chozas and Cabra, they're both Argentinian. They're both, well, one's more experienced, one's younger. So I do see how they fit together in that sense. But yeah, I don't know why. I don't have the best feeling about them. What about you, Gons?
So I think I'm probably a bit more. I think I probably like them a bit more than you do. I agree. Like Lucho's start of the year has been horrible, and yeah, his partnership with Bella has just been awful, to be honest. But he did have, I think, some sort of recent results in the last year. I still think he can play. He was like his second stint, let's say, with Maxi Sanchez wasn't terrible. A couple of quarterfinals in there, if I'm not mistaken, semifinals as well. But yeah, I mean, it's it's a bold move, and let's see how it pays off. But I definitely think that in the long run they'll be better off than Leal and Campagnolo, just because I think potentially what you were saying in terms of Campagnolo being that bit more emotional, I think that Lucho is a bit more stable and is not as like that type of offensive. Even though he's lefty and he can smash and stuff, he's not like he's not like a Coello type lefty. So I think he'll bring a bit more consistency to Chozas, and yeah, I think that, I mean, realistically, if they make, let's say, the quarterfinals, I think that'd be like very decent results, and I don't see them making a semi-final, for example. But yeah, it's just, I guess, really expensive to make a semi-final these days in the Premier Padel Tour, to be honest.
It's tough. It's tough. We know we've just mentioned how far away the top four pairs are, at
Yeah.
least in our eyes, from the rest. And maybe I do agree with what you're saying regarding in the long run that Capra and Chozas could be, well, I don't know about better off, because I do think that Javi Leal's progression is just gonna, well, he's just gonna get better and better. And if Campagnolo gets back to the level that he was playing at with Javi Garrido, for example, they could be a really dangerous pair. And when you think about how well Campagnolo and Garrido did together, Garrido and Leal are almost quite similar players. Their smash is their best attribute. They're very offensive. And if they kind of try to replicate the same model, or, well, the way of playing as they did when Campagnolo and Garrido were together, then I think it's a recipe for success. I just think I'm not sure that Cabra is the perfect partner for Chozas. I just think that Cabra is probably not very informed regarding what he's used to in terms of his level. And I don't know whether he can just turn it around that quickly. So that's my doubt regarding their partnership. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I'm not excited about them, just
And
less.
yeah, and to be honest, the other probably important point as well with them is that Cabra still has like a quite decent amount of points. So if there's someone, I don't know, there's another split or another player available that sort of lures Capra, I think he's like a very, very good asset for any player up there. Like Chozas doesn't have many points, so it could be the case that Capra then decides to move on easily just to be at a higher seed, essentially.
100%. I could definitely see that happening.
But yeah, I think that probably brings us to the end of the episode. Hugo, it's been a blast as always. And yeah, the first one for our YouTube channel. So obviously, please, to all our viewers, our listeners out there, if you do like this episode, please subscribe and like it as well. And yeah, we'll be seeing you here a lot more often. And maybe should I give a sneak peek, maybe a little giveaway of the next episode? Because I think it's also going to be quite special.
think it'd be rude not to.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll just give this hint. We've the next episode is going to be a guest, and we've mentioned them in this episode. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, I can't wait to have Tapia join us.
Gosh, Hugo, you just gave it away. What are you doing?
I
But
wish, but
yeah,
nonetheless, our
one
guests,
day.
they have nothing to envy. So I'll put it that
Exactly.
way.
And we have mentioned them in this episode. So yeah, maybe make sure that you do listen the whole or view the whole episode so you can see who it is. But yeah, Hugo, like I mentioned, pleasure as always and thank you for joining.
Cheers, Gons. I've had a great time, and I hope everyone, well, all our viewers and listeners have had as well. And yeah, just looking forward to continuing our, well, and building on our presence on YouTube. Yeah, excited for what's to come. Cheers, guys. Have a great week.